This is Space Extreme with another daily space news update. There is a lot to cover, so let's dive in. SpaceX is about to launch its first Starship Super Heavy booster into orbit. The company had already begun testing the new favorites for Starship's orbital launch debut Booster 7, and Ship 24 for a long time since they began qualification testing in April and May of 2022. Booster 7 and S24 have each completed several cryogenic-proof tests, 8 spin primes of some or all of their Raptor engines, and several static fires of those same engines. Most recently, Ship 24 ignited all 6 of its Raptors, but the seemingly successful September 8 test was followed by more than a month of appearance repairs. Booster 7 last completed a static fire that ignited a record 7 of its 33 Raptor engines, offering an idea of how much further SpaceX still has to go to finish testing the Super Heavy almost exactly 6 months after the start of that busy period of testing. Both prototypes recently reached the point where SpaceX was confident enough in their progress to combine the two for the first challenging phase of Starship. Testing yet around sunset on October 11, SpaceX, after 2 aborted attempts, had better luck on its 3rd attempt, and was able to move the arms into place under Ship 24. Weighing 100 tons or more and measuring 9 meters wide and around 50 meters tall, the Starship was then slowly lifted about 80 meters off the ground, translated over to Booster 7, and lowered on top of the 69-meter tall first stage. After about 2 more hours of robotically tweaking their positions, the 2 Starship stages were finally secured together, making the first full stacking for the 24/7 duo. The weeks ahead are expected to be exciting in terms of Starship development. The duo will have to overcome 2 important milestones: the first full stack wet dress rehearsal and 33 engine static fire, the results of which could determine whether they qualify to conduct a launch into orbit later this year. It's unclear if SpaceX will attempt a full wet dress rehearsal or a 33 engine stage fire first. Based on the history of Ship 24 and B7 testing, it would be a departure from the norm if the company doesn't slowly build up to both major milestones with smaller tests in the interim at a minimum, assuming WDR testing is completed without major issues. SpaceX will likely attempt at least 1 or more interim static fires with fewer than 33 engines before attempting the first full test. Should these gradual testings go without a hitch, there is a chance that SpaceX could move directly into preparations for Starship's first orbital launch attempt without unstacking the rocket. In the likelier scenario that some issues arise and some repairs are required, the path will be more circuitous, but should still end in an orbital launch attempt late this year or early next. However, SpaceX's flagship rocket most likely won't be able to fly before NASA's massive moon rocket, even when it becomes ready. If you don't believe me, well, let's go back a year ago time. Following a series of explosive low-altitude tests, the Starship was ready to launch on its first orbital flight in 2021, but the launch was delayed pending the outcome of the environmental review. This paved the way for the SLS to have a shot at becoming the first to launch, but the SLS squandered its chances with a series of scrubs. Does that mean that the Starship still has a chance to launch first? Probably not, because some people don't want that, and the ship is still stuck on the ground waiting for a launch permit from the Federal Aviation Administration. Regardless, once Starship launches, it will definitely crush the SLS, packing almost 25 million pounds of thrust between them. The SLS and Starship are the world's most powerful rockets. The SLS in its current configuration can generate 8.8 million pounds of thrust, which is enough to earn it the title of the world's most powerful rocket. According to SpaceX, however, the Starship is roughly twice as powerful as its competitor, and capable of generating around 17 million pounds of thrust, an amount that no future variants of the SLS could even come close to achieving. And as for its payload capacity, the Starship could carry over 230 tons of cargo to space, whereas the SLS rocket's capacity ranges from 27 to 46 tons. So if the SLS does manage to launch first, it will hold, however briefly, the title of the world's most powerful rocket. But once Starship launches, it could make the title become unbeatable. The SLS goes hand in hand with NASA's Artemis program, but in terms of the design of the vehicle, it was unveiled back in 2011. 8 years after it entered the formal development stage with many delays, SLS was believed to have cost in the region of $23 billion. With Musk's Starship, the booster element has been developed over the years from the Falcon 1, which was retired in 2009, to the Falcon 9. Falcon Heavy, and now Super Heavy. For this reason it's difficult to accurately compare the SLS to Starship in terms of its development and cost to build, but in terms of Starship alone it is estimated to have cost SpaceX in the region of $216 million. It's extremely cheaper compared to its NASA counterpart, and in November of 2019 Musk claimed a Starship launch could cost just $2 million each time. In comparison, it has been estimated that the SLS costs an eye-watering $4.1 billion per launch. That's over 200 times more the cost of the SLS. Seems so egregious because each multiple billion-dollar rocket will be discarded after a single use. Its components regulated to the sea floor as junk or left adrift in space. Such was the standard for most of the space age, but times have changed. Starship and its giant Super Heavy booster are instead built for endurance landing back on the ground for rapid reuse, similar to SpaceX's current fleet of Falcon rockets. This is part of the reason why the flight costs for Musk's vehicle could end up 200 times cheaper per launch than most rockets. In short, the SLS, with its countless delays and budgetary issues, has become NASA's most controversial project in recent years, perceived as an outdated, unnecessary money sink, and a symbol of everything wrong with the industry. It won't become any less outdated or unnecessary if launched earlier than the Starship, but the record-breaking flight would at least give it some value. However, Starship, once fully operational, would blow any pretense of the SLS importance out of the sky. And as for Blue Origin, well, needless to say, we just mention it just to reiterate that more than 2 decades have passed and Jeff's rockets have yet to reach orbit, and this is really ironic. Even young space companies like Astra Rocket Lab, or the newest Firefly, have joined the orbital club. Why is Jeff's firm still just hanging around the edge of orbit after pouring tons of money in? And when will their last hope, New Glenn, officially launch? What do you think? Will Blue Origin be able to launch New Glenn next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Otherwise, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more.